Wir sind mit dem ganzen Team nach Paris gefahren, denn wir haben die Chance, hier bei OpenAI mit Romain zusammenzusitzen. Romain ist quasi derjenige, der die Codex-App verantwortet. Und wie ihr meine Videos kennt, ich bin sehr excited über die Codex-App. Ich bin Heavy-User und mein Ziel ist es, euch so viel wie möglich zu teilen, um von Tooltourist zum AI-Anwendungsweltmeister zu werden. Das heißt, wenn ihr dieses Video hier jetzt auf YouTube schaut, bekommt ihr den Deep Dive, wie OpenAI intern selbst Codex benutzt, Pro-User. Das könnt ihr hier erfahren. Und wir haben gerade eben den AI to the DNA Podcast aufgenommen. 1 Stunde, wirklicher Deep Dive behind the scenes. Den empfehle ich euch gleich hinterher, falls ihr das jetzt nicht schon gehört habt. Romain, we had the podcast, so we're quite warmed up. And we can directly jump into what matters. So we have the Codex app open here.
Yep.
And one of the challenging questions I had for you is what changes on a Monday morning, which is it today now actually. It's Monday noon.
Correct.
Actually, but could be Monday morning. What changes once I have the Codex app running, and how would you use it if you're a non-coder?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing I would show you, so I removed some of the automation so I can actually show you a little bit how I use Codex. But the first thing that is important about Codex is like the plugins, right? Plugins are a way for Codex to get all of your context. So here you can see, for instance, it can have access to my Slack, to my Gmail, to my calendar. We have like now over 120 plugins, I believe, in here. And
are there a mix of skills and MCP or like?
It's a great question. So a plugin is for us a way to package up a few different functionalities, right? So we started with like skills initially, but you can think of plugins as a way to package up skills, MCPs, and other things. So for instance, in the context of Slack, it can connect directly to like your app. It can package a Slack skill, multiple of these skills actually, like a daily digest, things like this. So all of these things are packaged into plugins. And for people who are coders, for instance, we build things like build web apps. And that plugin, for instance, actually bundles many interesting skills. One of them being to actually create front-end experiences by generating images with GPT Image 2 and then asking GPT 5.5 to implement those. So all of that is really easy to use because we package them up as plugins. So each plugin can contain multiple skills, for instance.
Okay, got it. So this is like the package and you maintain them in the background as well.
Exactly. And we work with all of these partners, of course, to land them. We want to have them like very high quality and make sure people can connect all of their tools. And so back to your question, once you have a few tools, and by the way, I should connect many more here for this demo, I just have a few, I can now actually start like a new conversation on Codex. And I could say, for instance, hey, every morning at 7 a.m., I want you to pull all of the context from my Slack, from my Gmail, from my calendar. I want you to give me a full brief of my day, my top 5 priorities. And I also want you to start pointing me to what's most critical and urgent, maybe from executives or from customers or candidates. And I want you to also start drafting some of these emails based on all the context you have so far. That's it. So I'm just sending this prompt. And what's interesting here is that I just dictated this prompt, first of all. There's no prompting magic in here. I'm just like trying to like delegate to Codex this task I want done. But also the fact I said every morning at 7 a.m. means that it's going to be automatically turned into a daily automation, as you can see.
Yeah.
And then what's very interesting is that now that thread, I can pin it at the very top. And now every morning I can get back to this thread with everything that matters to me at a glance.
And this is like what people used to build manually as an automation. I mean, as developers, you have a cron job and they're like, oh, no, it's easy. But people who are not used to that would have to brainstorm and think, how do I make this process? And they have to get used to this, to just ask the tool and then get the answer.
And that's what's magical about this product, right? It's like I don't even have to be like technical and understand the idea of a cron job. Like Codex will just figure this out for me.
And you use it in medium or high? Like how do you decide on what level of intelligence you use the tool?
Yeah, so see, done. It's now set up for 7 a.m. every morning. It's going to pull up from all of my context. That's great.
And now go here and say...
Yeah, and so the automation was like completely like made. So based on my prompt, I have a few others here. For instance, I have one that I paused, which was like, hey, look at all of my PRs for these repos. And, no developer likes fixing the CI. like continuous integration. So like I can just ask Codex to just address comments and fix that. And so for your question on intelligence, I think like GPT 5.5 is so smart that I kind of tend to default to Medium personally for most of the time. When there is a task that I delegate that is very, very complex and I want the very best result, I would go as far as extra high because I don't mind the more tokens being spent because it's like very critical to me.
Do you internally have a token limit?
We don't, but like it's also like dependent on speed, right?
Yeah,
like,
okay.
For instance, imagine I'm like asking for a very complex like refactoring of a project, and I know for sure it's critical, and I'm gonna only do it once. Sometimes I reach for higher intelligence, but honestly, GPT 5.5 is so incredible that like medium reasoning is like great for most things.
So that would
Especially
be your...
for such a thing like an automation, right? I think when you think about like tools like that you connect to, things that you're using every day, it's very likely that what matters once again here is the quality of the context, the ability for the model to pull all of that context. And I think like GPT 5.5 Medium will do a great job at this.
And you have the auto review on. Is that the default mode for OpenAI?
Yes,
internally?
I think auto review is what I recommend to most people, honestly, discovering Codex. As you hover here, you can see that like it means that Codex run commands in a sandbox. And so what that means is that you're going to have these guardrails in place where like Codex will just access the things within the limits and the constraints here. And as it needs more, what we call here elevated request, it might ask for your permission to do more. And as such, like you can approve case by case if you're okay for your agent to accept things and grant the permissions. But maybe for people who are new to the Codex app, one thing to mention here is that on the left side, you have conversations, but you also have projects. So these projects, if you're an engineer, might be like a Git repo of sorts, like something that you clone from GitHub. Or if you're not an engineer, it might be like a folder that you're working with. You know, it might be your folder where you have your documents or your presentations. It can be your sales decks and things like that. And you can have those potentially locally. Or some of those live in the cloud as well, you know? So I think you can have all of your projects. And the right side, the interface is very familiar for anyone using ChatGPT, right? Ultimately, it is just a conversation. And within this conversation, there's a few extra things, like this review thing, for instance, that a ChatGPT would not have. But also on the right side, you may see like some interesting things about that conversation. In this case, it's an automation. We don't have an output yet because we did not ask Codex to output anything yet, but we'll see in some of the other examples. And sometimes it's like a diff of your code. But now let's jump on a few conversations I've made, for instance. So take a look at this one. What's great about Codex is that you can now have access directly in Codex to our new amazing GPT Image 2 model. So I simply said, hey, make a nice illustration for AI to Your DNA, podcast by Christoph. He made this. And by the way, this is mind-blowing to me. Well, like, I did not give it...
Writing is good.
I did not give it much context, but like, even just a year ago, getting just a headline to be correctly written was hard.
Too difficult.
Now, every little text is actually perfect, which is crazy. And then I said, oh, actually, you should add like the link to actually find this podcast. And why not you add a couple pictures of us? And like, sure enough, it was able to blend your picture and mine in this. This is pretty magical.
Yeah.
So you have access to ImageGen here, which is great because imagine you're building a presentation. Yeah, sure enough, you may want to have some visuals in there. So, or if you're building applications, as we said with front-end, you can now create a design. I think I've made some of these over here. For instance, if you scroll back here, I was like, hey, I want to have a furniture store. Can you make the design? And sure enough, this is what GPT Image 2 created. And I can simply ask Codex now, great, I like this, implement it. So that's like one thing here. There's a couple amazing things about the Codex app. One thing that I love, for instance, is the ability to now have an in-app browser in the Codex app. So here, for instance, let me actually like create a new task over here so you can see it from scratch. Imagine I'm working on a fitness application, and imagine I want to run the server, which was not running yet. But on top of that, I actually want to visualize it and I want to work on it as we go. So here, I'm going to ask Codex to run the server and open it in the in-app browser. So what that means is that Codex has an in-app browser, which we're going to be able to open in a second. And so what that means here is like Codex just opened it. I can like bring the right width to visualize what's happening. And here we go. And now I have my app over here. But you may wonder, well, how is that different? I can simply open Chrome and see it the same way. Well, what is very different and amazing is that now I can actually comment on things. So I can say, you know what? Change this with the date of today, right? For the header. Or I can say like change the color or animate some other things. And as I comment on things, I don't have to explain as much in my prompt what I'm trying to change. I point at things, right? Yeah. Maybe I can say, hey, make this font bigger, make this stronger, change the colors. I could also say like another prompt here, like translate my app to German. And sure enough, like if we check back on this task in maybe 30 seconds or so, this app will now be translated in German. It's pretty magical as I can just like talk to it. And it's really the power of like this agentic delegation, right? Because imagine, for instance, I have this project I have not worked on for a while this is working. And by the way, we just saw the date change right there. Mm-hmm. I can change back to this other project. And once again, I can dictate and say, I have not updated this Wanderlust demo application for a while. Could you update all of the dependencies from Node to everything else? Make sure there's no vulnerabilities in there. And we may want to also update from GPT Realtime 1.5 to GPT Realtime 2. And boom, I can just fire that off to Codex. And sure enough, on this other project, it may take 5, it may take 15 minutes. I don't know, but I can just delegate that to Codex.
What I see when I use the app is that I started to use many, many, many more projects in parallel than I did before. And I experienced for myself kind of this workload in my head that I get quite exhausted. I'm like, after a while, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of things happening. Is this something you talk and share about internally and you have ways to fix that? Because I see you guys putting a lot of effort into what do we show, how do we show it? And you can even take the code away if you want to make it more for normal work.
Yeah, and by the way, we have not even seen code over here, right? We only like focus on something quite visual, and right now it's actually writing all the translation for German in this app.
Just showing these little numbers. This is the code that changes.
Exactly. Yeah. So here it knows that I have a GitHub repository for this demo app, so it's not.
I love how you changed that one. This is pretty new here. This is like a slot machine going through. You see, like, oh, there's something happening.
So it's not shying away from. It's not shying away from like showing me that like some lines of code are being written. But yeah, I think, and here we go.
Oh, wow, nice.
We now have our fitness app in German. Pretty cool, right? So I think like one thing that's very interesting, to your point, is like getting used to this world of like agentic delegation and the ability for you to navigate like, okay, I can work on multiple things at the same time. I just have to be crisp on like what I delegate to an agent as a complete task. And I will only have to check back with the result and give it another turn, right? But it's like, we used to work on one thing at a time all the time, right? Because we did not really have this like infinite amount of teammates who could pick up our work. So it's getting used to this new paradigm of like, okay, I'm the manager of multiple AI agents. They can pick up and do great work for me on my behalf. So getting used to this like delegation. And it takes a little bit of practice, because there's more context switching.
Which brings me to the question of this new experimental mode of goals that we touched in the podcast, so that maybe we can see it here, because goals is now something where the agents can pursue a much longer task.
Yes.
And I have the challenge as a human to set a good goal. So what would be a good goal? Can we give it an example or anything? Like maybe...
Yeah, so let's take a look. I have not thought of that yet, but imagine I was going to show you this app for iPhone, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. And this is an app I made for iPhone, and it has like the astronomy picture of the day, and also something new that I added for the Artemis 2 mission recently. And what's great first to highlight is that I'm using Codex to build this app by just simply talking to Codex. And I'm also asking Codex to like build and run the app in a simulator. I did not even have to leave Codex to do so. But I've never tried this, and it might take longer than this conversation, but that's okay. Maybe one goal I could set is to say /goal, you know what, I want to port this entire iPhone app into an iPad app. And it should work on every screen size. It should work perfectly on landscape and portrait, and fire this off. And it might not be so hard a task, but it's one that came to mind. And here, what you notice is like sent as goal.
Right.
And
that's
because it's set as a goal,
Okay.
it means that like now it's gonna go work on that for some time uninterrupted and come back when everything is complete.
So while it's working, thought experiment, could I give it a whole list of OKRs of a company? I'd set up the project and say, okay, this is my whole list of OKRs. First thing you do is you work through them, make them in a way with research, with capability of going through the company data, set them as proper goals for an AI tool, and then fire off the 5 most important ones as a goal, no matter if it's code or non-code.
Absolutely. Yeah. You could even say like the goal is to tackle the top 5 of these like OKRs.
I will test that.
And for each of them, you can create like sub-agents or maybe branches if it's code or things like that. You can really be precise in your goal. And the idea is to be ambitious and delegate that to Codex. And by the way, so it's now currently working on porting this app to iPad. It's writing a bunch of code already. And, we'll let it run in the background. But another feature that we touched on in the conversation I wanted to show you is this idea of like computer use, right?
Yeah.
And computer use is when you don't really have a plugin to reach for. It's really about like, well, what I'm trying to accomplish is right here on my computer, but it might be repetitive. So here, imagine I say, can you use the simulator app and click through every screen from, let's say, the first to the third, one by one, and make sure everything is correct. So I could send this task, but before I do, I'll show you something here, which is interesting. Like over here, when you @mention, every app on your computer is now something you can @mention in the context. And what's great here is like I can say, can you use the simulator app? And if I click on that, it would ask for my permission. I think in this case, I already gave it.
Yeah.
And so if we look at the simulator that's here on the left, typically,
Right.
I would have my cursor taken over by any other implementation. But right here, this is Codex's cursor. And it's
so
clicking
you
through the
can
screen.
still keep on working while
I
it's
can keep
doing
on
its job.
working. This could be in the background. I only told it to go from the first to the third, and it just did. And it basically said no obvious navigation crash or layout issue showed up while I'm clicking through the first 3 tabs.
Even me as a heavy user, when we did the demo in the last video, I was like taking my hand away because I was so used to that it just taking screenshots and screen record. So that means you can really fire it off in parallel
Absolutely.
on different apps.
Yeah. Take a look at this one, for instance. A coworker on the Wanderlust demo app told me on Slack recently that we should, there's a task for me, which is like, can we rotate the secrets for Wanderlust, which I have not done yet. So I could even say, could you open the Reminders app and remind me of this task for me? I'm just going to say that, so not to help it too much. And what's going to happen is that once again, this is another computer use kind of task. So it will open up the Reminders app. And then all of a sudden, we'll actually be able to make a reminder for me. So it's very interesting how you can like fire off these tasks, whether they're computer use or, MCP plugins based, and just like let them go in the background without your cursor being taken over. And you keep working on what you're working on.
I think the biggest challenge will be that people need to, here it is, realize how much different of a way of working is. Do you remember there was a very, very famous post on Medium from Stuart Butterfield, the founder of Slack. It was called "We Don't Sell Saddles Here," 2013, I think. And he explained in a very long post that the biggest challenge that Slack had at the moment is when, before they ship the product, that they are changing the way how people work.
Yep.
This is, to me, truly the ChatGPT moment for companies because it changes how you work once you realize what you're capable of.
Yep.
How much effort do you put on that to teach that to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about this curiosity, right? People should have, right? And really try to push the frontier of what they can accomplish with something like Codex. For instance, I had a salesperson who was telling me at OpenAI that now every time they go meet a customer, they would spend a few hours before meeting a prospect to make sure that they would be up to date on the latest, what might be the top of mind for them. And now they're actually able to like use Codex to do some very deep research on a company, what might be top of mind, in what way could something like Codex help their workforce, help their engineering teams, what has been top of mind for them recently, and really adjust like the messaging, which is like, something they would usually do themselves in multiple hours. They can just get that done by Codex in a few minutes. So I think that's quite powerful.
What was something you were surprised latest that someone in the team come up with where you said like, oh, I didn't know that it would work?
I have so many of those, almost one a day, I would say. One on my team recently, what I was pretty fascinated by was, we were talking videos earlier. I have a coworker, Brent, who's a video like producer on our team, and like he's also like an engineer, but spends a lot of his time like making videos and live streams. And we had shot a few interviews with the Codex engineers, and we thought we have to like ship these videos. And the two of us brainstormed one night at the office thinking, do you think Codex would edit those videos? Like, I don't know, we should maybe try. And initially Codex had said, well, I can't edit your videos, but what I can do is that I can write a Premiere plugin. And if I'm in there, I can probably do something. We're like, okay, well, go ahead and write that plugin. And all of a sudden, Codex wrote an Adobe Premiere plugin. And from then on, we said, well, can you like write up the whole transcript of these videos, make chapters, use your best judgment, cut the things that you think are not relevant so the conversation can be trimmed down to this length. And instantly we saw all the chapters drop down in Premiere. And we looked at each other being like, wait, did this work? We played, every chapter was correct. And this is one of those moments where it's like, yeah, again, the models are so incredibly smart.
You need the ideas to what you would do. And that's why it's so interesting that you need to push people in their domains to think of hard problems to give to the model and the tool that do the magic.
Recently, another colleague of mine, Jason, thought, well, we're trying to make all of these new screencasts now to showcase these great features of Codex, but it takes us a while every time to get our screencast ready, but also put an intro card, an outro card, and things like this. Well, sure enough, he was able to get Codex to like write all of these animations into Remotion, and now Codex is able to make videos of itself, which is quite magical too. It saves us so much time because we're still like in the driver's seat in terms of deciding what the prompts should be, what the demo should be, but it really helps us. Like this is another demo app I was just loading. I think I was playing with, well, like just making games, and like this is just to show you one more example of how Imagen has become so good at like not just creating images but also sprites and things like this. I mean, we've seen these things for pets, where pets are based on sprites, so you can see the animations. These are just like illustrations of the same style, completely embedded in the game. It's just so magical when you can now accomplish, right? Like I think if I just restart this, now I can like move my character over here. But funnily enough, I took this Xbox controller and I told Codex, can you just like wire that up as well so I can play this game like from a controller? And sure enough, like in 5 seconds, I was able to move my characters there with an Xbox controller. So there's really no limit into what you can accomplish. From the most playful things and creative things all the way to like automating the toil that takes the joy out of your work.
Exactly. To me, that's the point. Like using that stuff and play around. And I think Sergey Brin with Google came up with that with a 70-20-10 rule that 10% of the stuff you do should completely be unrelated. Like 70 is the core business.
Correct, yes.
20 is the side to the core business, and 10 should be completely unrelated but while doing these stupid things, you stumble upon ideas. I build games with my kids, but now when I see this, I need to like rethink that. I have a controller at home. I should reconnect that.
Exactly. And see, apparently the goal we set was not that ambitious after all, because my iPhone app now works on iPad apparently, and it only took us 1 minute and 42 seconds. But in one shot, of course, like Codex was able to do it. I think what goal is very interesting for people listening. What it's very interesting with, like, as we said earlier, very ambitious tasks, like crushing a whole backlog of things that have been sitting for too long, refactoring a very complex code base for which it would take you weeks and weeks of engineering time, setting those very ambitious goals, I think is very much something people should try.
Especially because these are typically the things that are waiting in the inbox for a long, long, long time. And
absolutely.
So as a quick end note, give someone who says, okay, I try it, a quick setup in the settings. What are the buttons you press to make this app work? We had the plugins, that's for sure. But is there anything in the settings you should change to make it special?
Honestly, nothing too like critical. Just discover it along the way. You know, in your settings, you can change like the typical things. Like you would rather have the model being more friendly or being more pragmatic. I'm sure people in Germany would rather stick to pragmatic. You know, some people in the US love friendly. It depends on everyone's taste. You can also hatch your own pet. You know, the pet is the little like thing that you can put on the screen. Here, this is the default like Codex pet. It's basically these little creators that follows you to kind of like tell you the status of a task. So as you move on to other things and browse the internet, for instance, your pet can tell you, hey, I'm still working on your task, you know, hang on. But I think really the key for people discovering Codex for the first time is like connect the tools that you need and use every day. And from then on, ask anything to Codex, you know, and just asking Codex is the real advice. Whether it's like setting up an automation, whether it's like, hey, like, what can I do better in my own work? And I think that there are more and more features that are coming. I think one in the research preview for now that's like not quite available here yet, but hopefully will be soon, is something called Chronicles. This idea of Chronicles is quite interesting, right? Because it's the idea of like, okay, Codex, you can watch me do my work all day, all week. And as I watch me do my work, memorize what I'm doing. And at some point you could ask on a Friday, hey, what have I done this week that you think you could take off of me?
And make an automation.
And Codex would be like, you know what, I've seen you on Wednesday, you lost 2 hours copying and pasting things over there. Like I could just do that for you now going forward. This is quite magical too. So these are the things that are like upcoming for Europe. But in the meantime, I think there's so much power to just like harness by simply connecting the plugins and talking to Codex.
Is there yet the feature, or when is it coming, that you can even like on remote touch your locked Mac?
Yeah, so you can now set up your Codex Mobile. We just launched that last week. So the idea is that now if you have your computer with Codex and your projects, let's say you're an engineer, you have this code base here and you're working usually at the office from here. Now, when you're on the go, you can talk to Codex from your phone and you can like pick up the task that you left off at the office. Or you could also, hey, like, by the way, I'm just meeting like a customer now. Can you remind me, like, where is the deck that we made together yesterday? I can't find it. You know, you can really have your companion of Codex on the go. And it's already in the ChatGPT app, right? So it's not a new app you have to download. It's the ChatGPT app, except it's the Codex like tab into it that has access to the projects you've been working on. So that's really powerful. We just launched that last week. And last but not least, maybe as a one more thing, zooming out of Codex, and I hope people will be excited after listening to this to download the Codex app. Yeah. Whether they're using a Mac or whether they're using Windows, they can download the Codex app very simply on openai.com/Codex. We're also making progress on many more kinds of models. And one of the models that I previewed a week ago was what we've done in real time. And so I thought I would give you a sneak peek here as well.
It's real-time voice translation, which is a hard thing to do, by the way.
Exactly. So these are more for people who are trying to bring AI into their products, their companies.
Using that as
maybe it's for a customer support agent that's able to now like translate or talk any languages. Or maybe it's for you if you want to translate AI to the DNA automatically, all the episodes in multiple languages. So here, if I start a session, je peux commencer à parler en français.
Ich kann auf Französisch anfangen zu sprechen.
Et le modèle va continuer à comprendre.
Und das Modell wird weiter
en temps réel en allemand.
In Echtzeit verstehen auf Deutsch.
C'est assez puissant d'avoir la traduction en temps réel.
Es ist ziemlich mächtig, eine Echtzeitübersetzung zu haben.
So that's one of the 3 real-time models we shipped last week. I thought I would show you a sneak peek in German.
I mean, the model behind it, like Whisper, is getting so good, and like many people don't even realize. I mean, we use for years now that you like use speech to text for sure. And when I arrived last night, I changed my internal chat completion with a Whisper model to talking to German, outcome French, but not in real time. And this is getting like closer and closer. And the thing is, once you have an app on your fingertip that you can build something with it, there's no limit then.
Exactly. Yeah. And once again, to bring the two together, these models that are like, you know, translate models or like real time to build an agent, if you want to get started and use them, one of the best ways to do so is to ask Codex, right? You could be, for instance, hey, I'm running AI to the DNA. I need a way to like translate these episodes for now and my website in multiple languages. But like in the case of the episodes, it could take like the audio from each episode, turn it into German, turn it into French, and Codex would know actually how to use these models to do it on your behalf. So this is how you can also use Codex as the entry point as a builder and as a builder of anything, to build anything really.
So the team has a long ride back to Hamburg, so they have enough time to launch that. Nice.
Exactly.
So nice. Thank you, Romain, for that sneak preview and the behind the scenes view of Codex. That was very, very interesting. And I'm pretty sure we have to catch up in a couple of months to
I am sure.
get the progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much again, Christophe, for having me. And thanks everyone for listening. I hope you learned a few things about Codex and will be able to leverage it in your own day-to-day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.